Okay, so I think we're officially ready to start. Thank you guys all for tuning in to episode 2 of Nostalgia Nights. Tonight's guest is the esteemed KishPrime. He is one of the hosts of the FC tournament series, which is considered one of the best tournament series of all time. And he was quite a player in his own right as well back in the day. And so let's go ahead and start it off, Kish Prime, with just a brief intro of yourself in the competitive community, both as a TO and a player.
Yeah, so I started back in 2003 with Snexus 2. Snexus 2 was, I believe, in June or July of 2003. It was one of the first major Midwest tournaments that pulled in people from multiple states, and that was my start. We had about 50 people out there for that, including five that come up from California. And back then things were a little different. We'll talk about that more as we go. But then played pretty much through, I want to say, the end of 2007. Um, and played in a few MLGs along the way that were pretty fun. As far as hosting goes, hosted our first tournament in summer of 2003, the month after Snexus. We decided to try and get people back out because we enjoyed it so much. And from there, we hosted a few events as the ship. Joshu hosted these Flame Bowser tournaments down at Purdue, and we helped to run those. And also the Melee FC tournaments, of course, started then in the summer of 2004 and continued on for the next 3 years. We, I believe, set tournament attendance records pretty much with every iteration. And the last one, I think we were around 256. We capped out because we put a cap on it due to the size of the venue. And then we did our little reunion comeback tournament in 2012, which I think went pretty well. It was fun for us at least, and that was enjoyable too. But didn't
That tournament was awesome.
that was enjoyable.
Awesome. So great. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about was just, I guess, the inception of the FC series. What, I guess, led to you guys starting that tournament series? Was it just uh, because my recollection of the series is always that it was run extremely well. So is that what you guys were going for? Did you see that other tournaments weren't being run very well and see that there was potential there, or just take me through how that all started?
Yeah, I wish we could say there were just so many tournaments that we just could see them all going terribly. There weren't a lot of tournaments at the time.
Right.
I mean, it's good to remember that a lot of those tournaments were roughly between 8 and 20 people, usually in the basement of somebody's house or maybe in a community center of some kind. And the only real national tournament that had any kind of credibility at that time was the TG series. And the TG series had presumably ended. And that was, I think the TG5 was in 2003. And Matt Deasy said he was done, he was out. And so sometime around January, we started kicking around the idea of hosting it in our church. We knew we had a good venue. We knew we had some good resources to take advantage of.
Hmm.
And I think a big part of it too was just me being kind of an older member of the community. I think I was always second to Eddie in terms of age and in terms of the regular members of the community. I was always on the older side. And also my brother, he had some health issues, couldn't travel a whole lot, and so trying to bring a big national to him was a big motivating factor as well.
Right. Awesome. And I mean, that definitely ended up being one of the most successful tournaments, especially for the first iteration of a tournament. And one of the other things I definitely wanted to ask you about was the crew battle. You and your crew invented the crew battle. So give us a brief timeline of that, when exactly that took place, and when you guys really decided that it would be something that could, take place on a large scale, like East Coast versus West Coast.
Yeah, so the crew battle started in 2003. Our first tournament, actually. My brother wanted to run this tournament where after Snuxus 2, I guess he was inspired. And it was, I believe, Flame of Recca or Yu Hakusho. I think it was Flame of Recca officially. He thought that it would be just great if we had all the teams going at it. And I still remember him telling me about this. And I remember just laughing at him and saying, that's so stupid. Why do people throw themselves off the edge to play in a game? I just thought that would be ridiculous. So then we backed up and we actually tried it such that in a crew battle you would just go one by one, kind of like Japanese style, how they do their 3-on-3s, where you go until you lose, and when you lose, somebody else comes in and somebody else comes in, and whoever ends up surviving, that's it. So that was the first one we ran, and the way it worked was our crew, whoever went first, I can't remember who it was that went first. It might have even been Iggy. Basically beat everybody on the other crew, and then Eddie, who was the last person there, beat everybody on our crew. And so it was a really long crew battle that we just felt like was not very exciting or interesting. And
Right.
so we went back to the whole going back into stock mode, stock by stock, and convincing people for some reason to throw themselves off the edge. Uh, FC1 was the first real test of this I can remember that really, and that was a year later. So I have to feel like we probably tried it. Oh, I think, as I recall, everybody but me and the ship of Fools was our crew, and that was me, my two brothers, Kish Squared, Kish Cubed, Joshu, and Iggy. The four of them went up to um, Chicago to actually play crew battles against the Chicago crew, which was Eddie, Eduardo, and their two brothers. And so that was where they really hammered it out and decided, yeah, this is really a lot of fun. So then in Melee FC one, we ran some crews, and it was not regional at all. It was regional because people tended to play with their crews, but we ran it that way at FC one. It went pretty well, and then FC three really that came out of Ken and Wes, who were just throwing down on Smash boards and just going
Right.
at each other and talking about how West Coast, East Coast, whatever. We need something to prove what's going on. And so I
Right.
just slipped myself into the conversation and said, hey, you know what? We should do this at FC3
Right.
or
Yeah.
FC2, which it probably was FC2 at the time, but then we hosted FC2 on our own and FC3 came later.
Right.
So
The numbering system was always a little wacky, but
we held every single one of those tournaments. So
oh,
yeah.
okay. Well, confirmed for sure. So,
They may have only had 2 hours notice up to the web, or they may have been held against computer players in our basement, but they were all held, except for FC4.
nice.
That one got lost April Fool's Day.
Okay, sweet. Well, regardless of how many of them actually occurred, one of the best tournament series of all time. And as Kish Prime mentioned, the crew battle, as you guys know from the documentary, was probably still to this day the most hyped crew battle of all time. So, very awesome stuff. And the last thing I want to talk about real quick before we go ahead and start actually talking about the rule sets of the time was I guess just you kind of have a different perspective because you're very old school, but for us that were either East Coast or West Coast, it was just kind of that was the focus. A lot of the time when it came to, especially I know the Midwest wasn't quite as vocal in terms of trash talk and stuff like that. So a lot of the times, it wasn't that the Midwest necessarily wasn't. At the same level as the East Coast or West Coast. It was that we just didn't hear from you guys as much, and of course there wasn't as much inter-region traveling back in the day. So, given
Right.
all that, you being an old school Midwest player, give us just kind of an idea of what the scene was like in the Midwest from 2002 to 2005 or so.
Yeah, so really, it was really relaxed. Our tournament attendance for regional tournaments probably was around 20 to 35 over the course of 2003, 2004. Uh, really, FCC was the only tournament I can remember getting too far over, like 35 or 40 people. I think one of the Flame Bouncers might have gotten to 40 or something like that at one point. But the Midwest was so spread out. We didn't really have a hub. And for some reason, Chicago never took off as a Smash destination. It was really bizarre. No matter, we just couldn't find anyone that was, there was no crew, I guess, that really brought Chicago together as a community. Eddie and Eduardo just kind of did their stuff on their own, and Snacks was around, of course. You can't forget Snacks. Snacks was around running things for a while too, and helping run events and trolling
Right.
game facts to the end. But it was just a scene where we just all really enjoyed getting together. It wasn't hyper competitive. One of the reasons for that might have been the fact that Eddie was just so dominant that it was. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't like we weren't trying to beat him,
Right.
but it may have just been a fact where we just kind of said, okay, well, Eddie's been doing this for longer than anyone. He's the most
Yeah.
serious about it and goes to most events. So, we're just all here to hang out and enjoy and get beaten by Eddie every now and again. So I can't say that's why it developed that way, but for
Right.
whatever reason, I mean, it's just there just weren't that many matches. I think relative to maybe what the East Coast was again on a regular basis because we're just so spread out and far between. The only main crews back in the day were the Chicago crew and us, and there were a few other groups like out of Ohio, that played. But I
Hmm.
mean, for a while, about a year, I mean, it was pretty much just Ship in Chicago in the top five of the standings, like AOB, of course,
Oh yeah.
and some of them making appearances too. So that was a lot of how kind of the early days went in the Midwest for the first year or so.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much how I imagined it. And I think that the Midwest now, I guess, definitely has a lot more inter-region play, a lot more people traveling to bigger East Coast and West Coast events too. So a lot better
Yeah.
representation these days than there used to be for the Midwest for sure.
Well,
And
MLG and say MLG and sorry, the regional circuits both came out in like 2005, 2006 ish, and
right,
really I think helped drive a lot of that too. Before that, just wasn't a lot of travel outside the region. I think we sent like
right.
three people to Game Over and three people to TG, and that was about it. So
Right. Yeah. I definitely remember the Midwest Game Over contingent though. That was good times.
Joshua was part of it.
For sure. Okay, so going into, I guess, the main portion of this episode, what we're going to be talking about basically is rule sets. What you guys were just seeing, that video I was playing on Green Greens, was actually the first H2IL tournament of all time, was in August of 2002. And when we played, we generally just played with mostly FD, not very many crazy stages, and we already had items off. And this was very early into Melee's lifespan. But for this tournament, we figured that most people probably played with items on, and for that reason, we did actually have items on very low and a pretty conservative item list, I would say. We had a lot of items switched off, but the stage list was already very open. I don't remember if we had any stage bans, but if we did, it would probably be like Flat Zone and Icicle Mountain probably. Because I specifically remember my first tournament match ever being on Hyrule Temple. So
Yeah.
we definitely had a very open stage list. And so this is for, again, 2002. Shortly thereafter, we pretty much just decided, we're gonna go ahead and just run our tournaments the way we want to. And so the tournaments that we had in 2003 were mostly just pretty close to what you see, honestly, today. I have a rule set from an H2IL local tournament that was held in 2003, summer of 2003, so about a year after our first tournament. And as you can see here, it is pretty conservative, pretty like standard to what you would see almost today. It's 5 stock, 2 out of 3, double elimination, no items. Now the stage list, the counter picking and stuff like that was not fleshed out at all at this point. So we had our neutral stages, but that was just the random stage list. So um, it's not very sophisticated that players can agree on stages, and there's no counter picks. As you can see at the bottom, in the second or third matches, it is also agreed on or random. So the counter picking process was still very primitive, but I think as you can see here, it's literally the exact same neutral list minus Corneria that we have today. So H2IL was very quick to, I think, to get to that point, whereas a lot of other regions took a lot longer to experiment with different types of rules. And so one of those regions, of course, is the Midwest. KishPrime, if you want to discuss how you guys started off with the rules a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think even it's probably smart to even go back before that and talk about TG because TG was really the national standard when it got developed, and I'm pretty sure that TG5 was still on the all random stages on rule set at TG5.
Oh wow.
Um, that was I mean that was the standard. That's what was at Snexus when we went to Snexus. I remember that, and so my guess is it didn't change a whole lot there, but there were only a few stage bans, and those came out after Matt Deasy decided to, I believe, stall out. It wasn't even stalling out. There wasn't even a time limit at that point. Camp the edge of Yoshi 64 for like 25 minutes or something like that, firing lasers back. And so that was the start of kind of stage bans and the time limit factor. Really, for us, our our rule set philosophy came out of that to some extent because they had items on too, of course, and all of that. But I think the driving philosophy behind what and I did a lot of the rule set defining. We all kind of agreed on what it was, but I was the one for the most part that took the lead on a lot of the rule set kind of establishment. The philosophy was always just kind of keep as much of the game in as possible. When it's broken, take it out. When it's not viable anymore, take it out. And so we really kind of stuck to that. And we talked about before. Melee FC had items on. It was one of the last tournaments to have items on. But even at that point, we'd already all kind of acknowledged that, yeah, getting eliminated by an exploding box that you can't see coming because you can't turn off exploding boxes,
Right.
not a great thing. So our round robins in Melee FC1, they weren't eliminating anyone, and so we were able to keep items in there. We thought that was still a good compromise to still keep items, since items are part of Smash in the
Right.
game. And so we took the same philosophy with stages. Stages we kept on pretty much as long as we could. We eliminated them as they turned out to be broken or abused or used in different ways that created unfair strategies. But I think that was the big difference, was that East Coast was very quick to want to narrow down the game, whereas we thought, okay, we're not trying to build Street Fighter here. We're trying to take
Right.
Smash and play it competitively. So what is the minimum you have to do to make Smash Brothers playable in a tournament environment and still be fun?
Right.
And so that was really our guiding philosophy. So
Yeah, no, I mean that clearly came out in the way that the rule sets developed, and I mean I'm very glad for it because although obviously at the time I preferred the way we were doing it with our limited rule sets, but I'm glad that the rule sets at least had that opportunity to most people tried out all types of crazy stages for the first couple of years, if not beyond that as well. This is a match that I'm pulling up now, which is TG4, Ken versus Sam. And as you guys can see, it's on Mute City. Mute City took one of the longest to end up being banned. It only got banned in the past like 5 or 6 years, I would say. So Mute City was legal for a long
tragically,
time, but
tragically
um,
banned.
there's also items on in this match, as you'll see. I think that it's interesting to see the way items are affecting the match and stuff like that. It definitely adds like a certain element, but just as KishPrime mentioned, having a random exploding box spawn right in front of you as you do a move is kind of the the determining factor where we just kind of have to say, okay, this is a tournament match. We can't really allow something like this. Even if items, you could make the argument technically that some item set could be, competitively viable if there wasn't that aspect of the random exploding capsules and stuff like that. But that is unfortunately something you can't turn off in the
I
items. So I
think that
think,
argument would have been interesting. I mean, it would have been interesting to see if we could have turned that off to see how things could have changed. I mean,
right,
there are stage control properties to items that are very, very interesting, and obviously after they were off, they were never coming back on. In terms of the later games, even nobody was interested in considering them. I think Raw would have been a much more interesting game with items on to kind of break up the defensive mechanics, give
right,
stage control a little more value.
yeah.
It would have been interesting to see how it played out.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and it would have been interesting to see as well the different item sets that came forth from that. But again,
Yeah,
it's just unfortunate that there's that limitation of the item containers, whether it's a container or a
yeah.
crate or a capsule or whatever it might be. They have the possibility of exploding randomly, so and they do spawn randomly. So sometimes you just throw out a move and instantly die. So big drawback to items for sure. So I think that the West Coast was pretty adamant about items with TG for a few years, and then
Hmm.
I think the turning point was I remember Isaiah came into a TG thread and just posted I think items should be off or something like that. Just a nonchalant Isaiah post as usual, but it caused like a huge stir. Like, oh man, Isaiah agrees that items should be off, and I think that was what eventually led. Oh man, Samitude is getting decimated in this match. He just got four stocked. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that was the big spurring moment where everyone was like, okay, even on the West Coast, we kind of acknowledge that items should probably be off. So
Well,
starting
I think there were a couple
TG6,
matches too in particular. I remember Eddie brought back a story from TG5, I want to say, where it was on pipes and they were just fighting up on the upper right of the stage. And I think it was one of those situations where I think Doug was at like 130% and Eddie was at 10. And sure enough, exploding box just spawned right on top of Eddie. Eddie gets killed, and that was kind of one of those moments where you're like, ah. And it was a top eight. That was a top eight match. So I mean,
Right.
it was one of those moments. There were a couple of those moments I remember as well, which also helped make the case even beyond Isaiah's massive influence.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there were those key moments that happened, and people they definitely stuck out in people's minds. And I mean, obviously, all of us on the East Coast were very thrilled when the items were eventually turned off. This match that I just pulled up is Fuse versus Vocal at a super old school Midwest tournament. Which tournament is this again?
This is T Not, the next Ohio tournament. It might have been actually the next Ohio tournament too, but yeah, FuseGen was an old school Falcon player who was playing Falcon before really anybody played him except for Isaiah.
Hmm.
I think he was as good as almost any Falcon player at the time, and Vocal was playing Ice Climbers too, also before a lot of people were. So
Right.
it was interesting. He actually won not a major Midwest tournament, but I believe he won a minor Midwest tournament. He got second in this one to Joshu,
Oh, okay.
and so yeah, it was kind of a minor major Midwest
Right.
tournament. It's a good one. But yeah, Onet, hey, good stage.
Right. And yeah, I wanted to pull up just one of the older Midwest rule sets in general. Give me 1 second here. Just to give you guys an idea of what an actual rule set looked like back in the day. And so here we go. This is the Midwest Challenge, August 9th, 2003, I believe. Yeah,
Yep, this
2003.
was right after we started, after Nexus 2, right next to TG5 to place it,
Right. Okay.
right
And
before
so
TG5.
here you guys can see the rule set. Here, maybe I
Thread is
can
still live on
make this.
Smashboards.
It is still live on Smashboards. And guys, when I post this video on YouTube, I will have a bunch of links in the description to stuff like this that you see here. So the rules, just in case you guys can't read those: double elimination, randomly seeded for teams. Depending on turnout, there may be a small round robin entry seeding round robin prior to the 1v1 tourney. So the Kishes were one of the earliest TO groups that were focused on trying to get round robin going. Much of the
Yeah,
earlier tournaments were just straight to bracket always. Best of three, which, like I said, best of three actually got established surprisingly early on, which I'm happy about. Four stock, 7 minute time limit, which is pretty similar to what you see today.
hmm
Um, items on low, no hearts, tomatoes, stars, cloaking devices, or mushrooms. So aside from
totally unfair.
those, everything else was on. Damage ratio 1, which isn't something that you really necessarily see included anymore, but just being thorough. And Hyrule Temple and Yoshi's Island 64 are banned. So aside from those two stages, every other stage in the game was legal. Um,
And was on the random select for the first round.
oh wow. Okay, so it was a full random list as well between all of those stages, every stage in the game minus Temple and Yoshi's Island 64. I guess you guys had already figured out that those stages were a little bit too huge to be really.
That was the Matt Deasy situation where he was running out to clouds and just lasering in at people.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So yeah, we that was actually West Coast Discovery. They had already decided that those two stages were not good for play.
Ah, I see. Well, the runaway fox laser strategy was definitely established early on, so a lot of
Didn't take
stages are now banned due to that strategy, pretty much. Team Attack
yeah.
was on already. Team Attack is something that we haven't discussed too much so far. Generally speaking, it was on for, like, I would say the vast majority of tournaments. East Coast, specifically MDVA area, we had it off for a little bit up until Game Over. Game Over was the last major that had Team Attack off, and since then it's pretty much been on always. Makes sense. There's too many dumb situations that can come up from Team Attack off. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much what a rule set looked like back in the day. As you guys can see, it's I'd say a lot simpler in some ways. The very to the point. But the stage list is obviously a lot smaller since there's only two stages banned out of all of the stages in the game.
Just
So,
little.
so yeah, that's basically what an old school rule set would look like in a Midwest tournament in this era. As I said,
Well,
the
let's
Sorry,
be
go
clear.
ahead.
This is a really old school. I mean, this was already changed within a year, and this was our literally our second tournament we'd all attended together. So
Oh, okay.
this was when we say old school. Yeah, it is old school, but it didn't last that long. This was,
Right.
in fact, by the fall, we tested out a neutral six stage set at the East Coast's recommendation. We all hated it at the tournament. Pretty much everybody was unanimous that that was a terrible idea to go down to six stages. And so then we backed out. We started experimenting with the other systems, which eventually led to the Melee FC kind of base rule set that was the standard for about 4 or 5 years in terms
Right.
of the format.
Right. Okay. Awesome. And the TG3 rule set is what I have up here now. The TG threads were, I'd say, a little notorious for being, I don't know, very wordy. Matt Deasy usually had a lot to say about various different things, and it kind of took a while to find what you were looking for sometimes. But here is the rule set. Three stock, I think, was the original standard in the West Coast. East Coast actually started at five stock, and so it's interesting to see that there was that different stock number for the different regions, kind of.
Yeah.
Items on medium, team attack on obviously no time limit, which is interesting. This is again TG3 was I think early 2003.
Uh,
It was very here. Let
Geez,
me see if
it
it's
might have been even earlier than that. It might have been late 2002. I want to say
yeah,
because TG5 was the summer of 03.
right.
So
Okay, yeah,
TG4 was when
it
they
may have
really.
been late '02. So this is very very early obviously. So no time limit yet even. Slob picks. Slob picks were I don't know where that name was established, but it's the basically just counterpicking. It was a name that people had for counterpicks back in the day.
So
Initially,
it's actually slot picks. It was a little different back in the day because you could either choose the stage or the characters. Which is maybe what you're about to say.
yeah, yeah.
You couldn't do both.
There was a few different methods of doing it. Like right here, it says Slob picks character and stage, and the winner has to keep the same character. So the winner wasn't allowed to change, but the loser got to pick the character and the stage, which is a little much, I think. Slob picks is more aligned with what you would see today. I first saw that in our region with Muffin King, used it at the bomb tournament series, and it's just where the loser picks a stage, and then the winner has the option of changing, and then the loser has the option of changing after the winner decides whether to change or stay. So that's what you typically see today. But again, as I said, we didn't even have counter picking stages at our early tournaments at all. It was just all random. So there's a lot of different counter picking styles that eventually led to the I think standard. And let's see. I'm gonna pull up TG4 as well just to see if it's any different really.
TG3 was famous, of course, for one thing, which was that was the first time somebody had flown across the country, as I recall, to play in a Smash Brothers tournament, and that was Eddie, and I
Oh
believe
right,
Snap Pop as well. But yeah, Eddie was old enough to have a real job and actual money, and so that was a big deal at the time.
right. Yeah, I see the the TG4 rule set does have the following stages banned: Hyrule and Yoshi 64. So,
Yeah,
just as you said, the Matt DZ clause, I suppose, of
it was.
the Runaway Fox being OP on those stages. But yeah, I mean that was certainly a huge deal back in the day of someone being that first person to actually fly out for a tournament. No, I don't think anyone really considered the game to be at that level yet. So for Eddie to do it that early was pretty crazy for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and so basically, you guys kind of get the idea that toward the end of 2004, beginning of 2005, especially with MLG being established in those years, the push toward a kind of a standardized rule set was taking place. And as KishPrime said, the FC rule set, which you can see here, the FC3 rule packet. Shout out to the FC rule packets, so thorough.
Tried to cover everything.
um, and so, okay, here we go. Tourney rules. The FC rule set, in a lot of ways, did end up leading to the MLG rule set, as far as I know. They were very similar, right?
Yeah. Jason and I were working together at the time, and he literally just kind of took it and ran with it. So
Awesome. Yeah.
Jason equals M3D for those of you not in the know, and that may not even help some of you.
Yeah. M3D was the original Smash host for the MLG tournaments. So
Hmm.
was originally from Maryland. Also, I actually when I was
Yeah,
looking
that's
up
right.
that 2003 H2IL tournament, I saw M3D in the results somewhere. It was pretty funny. It was still Marth Master MD at the time.
Great.
But yeah, as you can see, this is FC3 again, 2000 summer of 2005. The rule set was already starting to kind of be standardized to where a lot of this stuff is similar to what you see today. You can see the advanced slab picks are already in there, which is what we use today. Um, the stage list is still a little bit more open back then. It's again, I would say it took a few more years after the MLG era, even for the stage list to really get more limited to where we see today, where it's only 5 or 6 stages that are allowed. But aside from the stage list, pretty much everything you see there is very similar to today. 10-minute time limit is a little bit different, but the time limit hasn't really ever been a factor in Melee anyway. So
Not,
I
not
don't
really.
think I don't think there was ever a big the time limit was ever a big point of contention as far as rule sets go in Melee's history that I can remember.
Mhm. The other big thing about Melee FC3 was that that was the tournament where we first did round robin elimination for multiple rounds. Where we took we had, I believe, 3 full rounds of round robin elimination before we got to the final 32.
Oh yeah.
And and then the final 32 we made it a big deal out of, and it was a big. You were at that one, as I recall. You weren't at
Hmm.
not the first one, but you were at three,
Yeah.
and you were up there in the seatings. But that was really fun because we SC3 again for Jill will vouch for this, but I mean for those of you that weren't there to some degree even since then there's never been another tournament quite like it. I mean
Yeah.
when Jason and I were going through, we had about 47 of the top 50 players in the country there by our measurement. It was we brought in that the hype behind that regional crew battle was so huge that everybody flew in, even crews that never traveled, like SkyPal and some of them from Seattle. Everybody came in for it. It was really amazing. And
Right.
so the final 32 was just crazy hype because everybody was just topping their region
Hmm.
and fighting out a lot of times for the first time because there hadn't been a tournament like that before.
Yeah.
A lot of people had gone one at a time, but
Yeah. No,
yeah, the round robin was cool.
I definitely agree that that tournament was one of a kind. It was, I mean, first of all, it was my first FC, so it was the first time I really had a tournament that was more of like an experience than just a tournament. And in addition to that, the 3 rounds of round robin was a really new thing, but it was really cool. You got so many matches, and as the rounds progressed, they got harder and harder, and you could kind of feel the skill level increasing through each level. And obviously, it led to I think a very accurately seeded bracket. So super good idea. Again, the Kishes, the Ship of Fools, at the forefront of innovating the rule set game. So props to you guys for not only the round robin stuff, but also the crew battle stuff that you helped come up with.
Crew battle was the best, and that Jeff. That's all credit goes to Jeff. I don't think we're all on that boat. Jeff definitely was the one who was telling me about it for the first time, and I definitely laughed him off. So
Nice. And that's Kish
ended up being
squared, correct?
a fantastic idea. That is Kish Square,
Okay,
yes.
cool. Just letting the viewers know. So, as I said, there's not too much that changed after this. One thing that I think, aside from, as I said, the stage list continued to dwindle over the next few years. I'm not sure when stage strikes became the standard over just randoming um, for the first round. Do you remember when that took place? That was I think post
Yeah,
brawl.
that was like 2009. That was well after we had stopped hosting
Right.
tournaments. It was around, I think 2008 was when people started experimenting with it.
Hmm.
Around 2009, it kind of became the standard.
Right.
But back then, I mean, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to do it with nine. Well, first of all, I don't think anybody actually talked about doing it seriously with 9 stages. I think people talked about doing different kind of formats.
Yeah.
We started with 11 stages on that random select as kind of fair stages. I think we were down to 9 by the time we stopped hosting major tournaments, and probably the same 9 that are up there. Well, we took maybe we went down to. I know Poke Floats came off at some point, I'm surprised we took Mushroom Kingdom 2 off of neutrals because we always thought that one was pretty darn good too. Uh, yeah. So anyway, back to your point. Stage strike came in a lot later, and that was a pretty major change in terms of not randoming the first stage.
Right. Yeah, that was, I mean, for as long as I can recall, it was always just random for the first stage, or obviously if the players agreed on it. But so
Right.
it's kind of cool that there was that change that late into Melee's history. But aside from that, I think that the tournament rule set that you see today is not too dissimilar from one you would see in like late 2005 or 2006 for the most part.
Just
Um,
number of stages. Yeah.
Right. So we definitely, I think, got to that point of standardizing the rule set pretty much across the country after a couple years of various regions experimenting with different stuff and figuring the game out. So, and that eventually led to pretty much what you see today, the standard rule set that you see at Apex and pretty much every other big tournament. So there's still minor points of contention about specific stages and whether certain parts of the bracket should be 3 out of 5 or 2 out of 3, and that's usually an issue of time and stuff like that. So aside from that, pretty much across the board, the rule set is standard for most tournaments you go to these days. So
Yep. It definitely narrowed down. There was a whole back room, of course, that started endorsing rule sets, which I remember I fought against tooth and nail because it's funny, as strong of opinions as I have on stage lists, I always thought people should host different tournaments because I thought there's so many ways to play this game. Why not? Why not have four different nationals running four different rule sets? I mean,
right,
I always thought that was a great thing. And so I think the backroom standard list kind of came out around 2006, 2007, with kind of a way to standardize. But even before that, Major League Gaming, that was the real standardizing force. After that, FC Rollstar got picked up by Major League Gaming, and we were the biggest independent tournament. And Major League Gaming was the biggest all tournaments all over.
right.
That pretty much set it in stone, I think. And then from there on, it was just narrowing down the extra stages.
Right. Yep, and that's pretty much how the modern rule set came to be. And I don't know. I think that's pretty much all I have on my end. If anyone in the chat has questions, we'll be more than glad to answer. I don't know how much more time my man Kish Prime has, but as long as he's available, we can answer questions for you guys.
I could talk about the good old days for a long time. Yeah, be careful with how much time you give me.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened with me and wife last week. Once we
Yeah.
get talking about something. Oh man, how about them V games?
How
Shout
about them V
shout
games?
out to Underdog. He is actually a super old school player as well. I don't know if you remember him, Kish Prime, because he was from Maryland, but
I remember his tag. I don't
yeah.
think did you ever come to an FC? I don't remember
I'm
that.
not sure. I don't believe so, but he was fairly active on the old school Smash board, so that's probably where you remember him from.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the V games, for those that don't know, were basically a giant scam. It was something purported to be something like MLG, but they never actually paid out anyone who won any of their events. So
Yeah, the prize was supposed to be a flight to their finals, which was going to be a huge tournament somewhere. And so, I mean, it just they just disappeared. They gave away some T-shirts, and that was about it. So, yeah, it was ugly because that was a time when we were really not sure what professional Smash would look like, if at all.
yeah,
Major League Gaming was even kind of floundering at that point. They were having the same problems they've always had with paying out on time. And so a lot of people were thinking they weren't trustworthy at all. Ironic, I guess, that then people started saying, oh, maybe this V Games will be a good option.
yeah,
And they went around to like 32 cities, and people were like claiming them on Smash boards, saying, "Oh, this is I'm gonna take this one, you take this one." Back then, there were so few players that could really do that that was feasible. But
right.
uh, that was fun. I liked
Yeah,
it.
that was. Uh, I definitely remember that being one of the things people responding to once MLG dropped Smash from its main circuit. That oh yeah, oh nice link there in the chat. Definitely check out that link, guys. I was actually what I have up on the stream right now is your melee history lesson or get off my lawn, you kids.
Yes,
So.
still applies.
um, Basically goes through the top 25 most influential events in Melee history. So great read. I'll have this again in the YouTube description as well, so anyone who wants to check that out can do so.
Yeah, that was fun. I wrote that. I don't remember why I did, but it was funny because I wrote it, and then I think they were doing some kind of anniversary for Smashboards too, and so JB just decided to put that up in some kind of special room or something like that, and people just enjoyed, I think, reading through it a lot. I know Samex, Travis, enjoyed that a lot. He talked to me a lot when he was just starting to get his idea for his documentary going, and he said that that was something that really was good for him to read through and really kind of inspired him in a lot of ways. So
Right.
that was really cool to hear. But there were just so many cool things that happened over those years, and I'm sure my list is biased. I'm sure if you did your list, you'd probably move a few things around and have a few East Coast things a little higher. But
Right.
yeah, it was a
Yeah.
fun
No, it's still,
idea.
I'd say it's still a very good list, especially, again, for people that are just into this kind of nostalgic Smash stuff in general. It's a great list to read through, and I'm sure you'll learn a lot of stuff that you didn't quite know about through either the documentary or any of the nostalgia nights I've done so far. So, awesome
People are
thread.
asking what band stage we miss playing the most. And so I'll start with you. I'm curious what your opinion is on
I
that.
actually really like Mushroom Kingdom too. I don't know why.
Stage.
I I always caught the egg and like styled on people with the egg, so I think
Nice.
that's why I like that stage. But that's probably my biggest missed band stage. How about you?
It's funny. Well, just on MK2, I was always confused why people were so quick to rule out walk-offs. I mean, it's weird. We have stages where the edges are, super close to the edge, and we have
Right,
other stages. It just, again, it was, I guess, came back to our philosophy of why would you just take something out of the Smash if it's in there? It doesn't break anything, and really that never did. So we liked Mushroom Kingdom 2 a lot, and it's funny because that was the biggest controversy when we hosted our tournament in 2012. I was like, Mushroom Kingdom is the worst stage ever. Why would you have Mushroom Kingdom 2 on? I was kind of shocked, actually, that that would be the stage that would get the most flack, but
right.
it was. So my stages that I loved playing on and watching too were Mute City and Brinstar, and part of that is obviously because I was Pluff main. So to some
I
extent,
was
I
gonna
enjoyed playing
say.
on those because it was easier to win. Though I still will maintain that Brinstar is one of the most neutral stages in the game. Nevertheless, I really enjoyed watching because Mute City and Brinstar have very predictable patterns. You could really see people using the stage to their advantage, and at the 2012 Melee FC tournament, um, to watch people play on those stages with modern tech skill was really amazing. And Dark Rain ran circles around a few people because he knew how to play on the stages
Right.
and knew how to avoid, knew when the hazards were coming, knew how to avoid them, and knew how to use them. And that was a blast. Watching that in 2012, some of those highlights, of course, the five knee from Dark Rain
Oh
on Mute
yeah.
City. There's just some things that you can do on those stages you can't do anywhere else.
Right. Yeah. I do miss some of those stages, but I mean, and I feel like the tournament scene, the current stage list that it has, is very, very well pruned to the competitive environment. So I miss them, but at the same time, I wouldn't exactly be excited to see them return to tournaments either. So
You got to get some variety in your life, chilling. You got to be willing to experiment and try new
I'm still
things.
East Coast. East Coast is always in
I
my
know.
blood. So
Hey, and there's nothing wrong with the stages you guys have on for tournaments. It's fun to see it, but every now and again, it'd be fun to see, the top five and the melee gods and see them go
yeah.
at it on Brinstar, around Mute City, around
Oh
Rainbow.
yeah. I mean,
So I think that would be a blast.
I totally agree with you in that seeing a modern tournament put like maybe like a 2003 Midwest rule set on there just for fun, just to see what would happen and what would come from it would be extremely entertaining. So I have to give you that for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, and I'd make a prediction. I would guess that the standings would probably be about the same, and that's how it always was. That was kind of the argument back in the day was why do people feel the need to eliminate stages when it really isn't going to change the results any?
Right.
It never really did. So, it would be fascinating to see that and see if the results really did change all that much.
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting to see, but kind of doubt that it'll actually happen, but would
Oh, I doubt it
certainly
will.
be certainly be awesome to see. So,
Yeah.
um All right, I think the questions are slowing down a little bit. Why Pokemon Stadium still? I mean, Pokemon Stadium without the transformations is probably the most neutral stage in the game. The transformations, obviously, themselves would be banned if they were their own separate stages, most likely, except for the grass one. I mean, there's you can make the argument for any of them really, but I think that Stadium overall still retains that neutrality just because the transformations never stay for more than like 30 seconds or whatever it is. So, what about 20XX change versions of the old counter picks? That would be kind of cool to see. Just slight mods that make those stages more competitive. It's just the question of like whether anything like that would ever become tournament standard, since you would have to have the 20XX on all tournament setups or whatever it might be. But I have played some of those stages, like Yoshi's Island 64 without the clouds and stuff like that, that are surprisingly good and fun stages to play on. So
I mean, there's no real slanted surfaces in the neutral six right now, are there? I mean, playing on slanted surfaces is a completely different game.
right.
Adds a whole lot of new tactics and techniques into it. I guess Yoshi's story has the
Yeah,
ends.
just at the very edge, but that's not very significant. I know what you mean. It's definitely something that's like, for example, Yoshi's Island in Brawl has the whole stage is kind of weirdly angled, and that stage
Yeah.
is super different than all the other neutrals. So I think it's something that definitely is lacking, but it's kind of just in the way it worked out that most of the stages that don't have very many crazy things going on also don't have any slanted angles on them. So.
Right. What is it about those stages? So Mute City, are they then taking out all the transformations as well, or is it just the cars? What about it?
I haven't. Well,
People say it's uncompetitive.
the only three that I've seen do it well are Side. Essentially, is modded into a kind of melee version of Smashville. It's got like a bunch of buildings smushed together on a that creates a flat surface for the main stage, and then the little piece of cardboard that's being lifted around or whatever turns into the platform. So
Oh,
that
okay.
stage is actually really good. And then Green Greens is basically like a Pokemon Stadium without the transformations. It just has the
Ah, but Green Greens is so good by itself.
so, but I mean,
That was a good one.
the main things about those stages are that the blast zones are really crazy, and I don't know if that's a
Yeah.
result of because they're modded. Probably is because the stages actually become much smaller, but the blast zones probably stay the same. So the blast zones are really
Oh,
crazy,
interesting.
but they're definitely very good, like neutral type stages that I think if it was viable to have 20XX as an overall, version that everyone played, then maybe we would see something like that in tournament.
Yeah.
I saw a good question. Were any of the currently legal stages ever considered ban worthy? I don't think so because there's so few stages that are currently legal. Stadium is the only one that even I think got like the discussion of ever like being banned, and even that was pretty rare, and that was few and far between people that would call for Stadium to either be just a counter pick or banned. So, as far as Battlefield, Yoshi's, FD, Dreamland, Fountain of
Well, it depends,
Dreams,
right? Because there are some people who are still Battlefield only, or go down to a three-stage set.
right,
It just depends.
right,
I think that there have been people that have fought for it, but
right,
has it ever gained any serious momentum?
yeah,
I don't know. I've seen hacks, I've seen Scar, I've seen other people advocating for that. I don't know how
right,
strong the movement ever was for it, but
yeah. I don't think
that's the only thing I can think of.
right, yeah, and I mean
Besides FD on the East Coast.
I think there was only one H2IL tournament that was actually FD only the entire tournament, but so H2IL was very adamant about FD back in the day. But one note that I just thought of that we didn't really talk about was the Japanese rule set used to be Dreamland and FD only. I remember because when Ken went over there for the Jack Garden tournament, those were the only stages we ever saw in any of the videos because it was Dreamland and FD only, which is a very interesting stage set.
I thought they had a third stage because he used that then for his tournament
Oh, really?
out there.
Was it three?
I,
I don't
I
remember what the third one was, if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, you might be right. For some reason, three is sticking in my head, but maybe,
Yeah,
maybe Battlefield. But regardless, he
yeah.
ended up using that then for his tournament when he came back to try and get the
Oh,
Japanese to
okay.
come over.
Huh. I see. Well, yeah. It was. either way, just a very different stage set than anything you would see in the U.S. at the time. I think that the Japanese
Yep.
now use the same kind of rule sets we do. Um, did M2K only like FD when he became a competitive player? He was very much about FD for the first couple of years. Yes.
Oh yeah. Nothing that interferes with combos.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of people develop their stage philosophy.
Yeah, for sure. M2K essentially took me to FD twice at MLG Chicago 2006 because he took me to FD and then he beat me on Mute City in the last round, which was basically another FD for him to chain grab the hell out of me. So,
Yeah.
all right. I think the questions are slowing down. I think I'm good wrapping it up here. How about you?
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. Thank you again so much to my special guest, KishPrime, one of the hosts of I'm just going to go ahead and say it, the greatest tournament series of all time,
Bold.
FC,
Too bold.
um, Melee FC, and again, a great player in his own right in the old school days of the Midwest. So thank you so much for joining me. Had a great time, and if you guys have any questions, is there anywhere where people can contact you if they have any follow-up questions or anything like that?
Well, that's a good question. I do have a Twitter account that pretty much only gets used for occasional Smasher contact, which is Kish_Prime.
Awesome.
So feel free to tweet me. I am not a super active tweeter, but I will get your message if you send it. I'm happy to talk about anything old school Smash for as long as you want. So
Awesome.
that's
Yeah.
just being an old man.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for joining me and
Thank you for
had a
having
lot
me.
of fun. This will be on YouTube for anyone who didn't catch it in its entirety. And I'll have all the links to pretty much all the stuff that I showed you guys during the stream. As far as the rule sets and all that, you'll be able to find that in the YouTube video description. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks again to Kish Prime, and later.
Go Packers.
Yes.